Winter remembered Frost Creek before the people did. It crept in early that year, settling on roofs and shoulders, filling the cracks between words left unsaid. Snow fell in slow, deliberate flakes, as if the sky itself were weighing each one before letting go. I remember thinking that morning that winter had come not to punish, but to witness. They gathered near the stock pens, boots grinding ice into the dirt, breath clouding the air. No music, no laughter worth keeping, just a low murmur, the sound people make when they don't want to admit they're watching something cruel. At the center stood the woman with the sack over her head, burlap, rough and stained, tied loosely at the neck. Her hands were bare, red from the cold, fingers folded together as if she were holding herself in place. She did not cry. That, more than anything, unsettled the crowd. Someone said her name once, Eliza May Crow, but it drifted away unanswered, like smoke in the wind. Names mattered less when rumors did the talking. They said she was burned. They said she brought misfortune. They said no man had kept her long enough to prove otherwise. The sack made it easier. You can believe anything about a person you refuse to see. Caleb Holt watched from the edge, half hidden behind a post worn smooth by years of restless horses. He hadn't planned on coming. Truth was, he hadn't planned much of anything lately. Life had narrowed for him, the way it does when you keep choosing survival over hope. His coat was thin, patched at the elbows, and his boots had seen better winters walk away without him. He stood with his hands tucked under his arms, not to keep warm, but to keep himself from stepping forward without knowing why. He'd grown used to the looks, pity dressed up as judgment, the kind that follows a man who owns more silence than land. Frost Creek knew him as poor, quiet, harmless, the kind of man people forgot until they needed someone to do the work no one wanted to touch. Standing there, watching the sack-covered woman breathe in the cold, he felt the familiar weight of being unwanted settle in his chest. The sheriff cleared his throat, a sound too official for the moment. Martha Bell Rourke leaned toward the women beside her, whispering fast and sharp. Words like fire and curse slipped out, carried on the air like sparks. A few men laughed, testing the sound, then laughed louder when no one stopped them. One offered $2, grinning, only to withdraw it as the wind cut harder and the woman didn't move. Another pretended to bid with an empty hand, earning himself a slap on the back. Then her voice came through the sack, steady, low, unafraid. "Don't," she said. "Save your money." The sound of it quieted the pen, not because it was loud, but because it carried weight. It was the voice of someone who had already survived the worst and found no need to decorate the truth. "I won't make your life easier," she went on. "If you're looking for a bargain, look elsewhere." A pause followed, thick and uncomfortable, the kind that asks a question no one wants to answer. Caleb felt something shift inside him then, not courage exactly, but recognition. Shame has a way of teaching you how to hear it in others. He reached into his pocket and found a single dollar he'd meant to spend on flour. The bill was soft, worn thin by too many decisions. He held it for a moment, then stepped forward. His boots crunched loud in the quiet, every step announcing itself. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the ground, the way a man does when he's afraid of seeing too much. $1, he said. Laughter burst out, sharp and quick. Someone muttered that he was buying trouble. The sheriff hesitated, then nodded, eager to be done with it. No ceremony followed. No questions asked. The sack stayed where it was. The transaction ended as plainly as it had begun. They walked away together, a few steps apart, snow gathering on their shoulders. Caleb didn't reach for her arm. He didn't touch the knot at her neck. He matched his pace to hers, nothing more. The town watched them go, disappointment settling in once the entertainment left. The path to his cabin cut through a stand of bare trees, branches rattling softly overhead. Wind slipped through the fabric of his coat, but he barely noticed. All his attention was tuned to the sound of her breathing, even and controlled, as if she were counting each step. Once, her foot slipped on ice, and he slowed without thinking, giving her space to find her balance again. She did. No words passed between them. The cabin was small, leaning slightly as if tired of standing. Smoke curled weakly from the chimney, the only sign of welcome it offered. Inside, the air was cold but clean. Caleb set about lighting the fire, movements practiced and careful. When the flames caught, he stepped back, leaving the warmth to her. He placed a tin plate with bread and stew on the table, then moved to the far wall, sitting on the floor with his back against it. "You can take the bed," he said, eyes on the fire. "I'll be fine here." She didn't answer right away. The sack remained on her head, but her posture shifted, shoulders easing just a fraction. She ate slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the act more than the food. When she finished, she set the plate aside with care. "Thank you," she said. It was a small thing, the words barely more than breath, but they landed with surprising force. Gratitude had been scarce in Caleb's life. He nodded, unsure what to do with it. Night deepened. Wind pressed against the walls, searching for a way in. At some point, Caleb's eyes closed. He woke to the sound of fabric moving softly. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows. When she spoke again, the sack was gone. "I took it off," she said, not asking permission, just stating a fact. "I hope that's all right." Her voice was closer now, clearer. There was a steadiness to it that made him sit up straighter. "It's fine," he replied. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," she said. A pause then. "That's why I stayed." Caleb looked toward the fire, listening. For the first time that day, the cold loosened its grip. He didn't know what winter had planned for them. He only knew that something had begun, not loudly, not with promises, but with a voice that refused to be hidden any longer. Winter did not leave after that night. It settled in, made itself useful. Days passed in a quiet rhythm, shaped by necessity rather than choice. Snow needed clearing, water needed hauling, and the fire demanded constant tending. They moved around each other carefully at first, like two people learning the borders of unfamiliar land. Words were sparse, but intention filled the gaps. Caleb rose early to tend the horses he boarded for others, and Eliza mended what the cold had ruined. Shirts thinned to memory, blankets stitched back into purpose. Nothing about it felt like charity. It felt like balance. She spoke more as the days grew shorter. Not long speeches, just observations. How the creek sounded different under ice. How smoke curled better when the wood was cut thinner. Caleb listened the way he'd learned to listen to weather, alert and respectful. Sometimes he caught himself watching her hands as she worked, the scars pale against the lamplight, and felt something close to awe. She never hid them. She never explained unless asked. The town did not forget them. Frost Creek rarely did. When Caleb rode in for supplies, conversation thinned behind him. Eyes followed. He heard Martha Bell's voice once, sharp with speculation, and felt the old instinct to bow his head. That day he didn't. He paid, nodded, and left, carrying flour and judgment in equal measure. Eliza noticed when he returned quieter than usual. "They're wondering," she said that evening, not unkindly. "Let them," he replied, though his hands shook as he poured water into the pot. She watched him for a long moment. "Silence doesn't always mean peace," she said. "Sometimes it's just fear with better manners." The words stayed with him. So did the way she didn't say them to wound. A week later, the sheriff came riding up the path, snow creaking under his horse's hooves. He did not dismount at first. He looked at the cabin as if measuring it, then at Eliza standing in the doorway, unflinching. He spoke of propriety, of unfinished business, of a town that didn't appreciate unanswered questions. He suggested it might be best if Eliza returned to public keeping until a more suitable arrangement could be made. Caleb opened his mouth and found nothing ready to come out. The old habit surged. Step aside. Let others decide. Endure. Eliza stepped forward instead. "I am not lost property," she said calmly. "I am not unfinished business." The sheriff's jaw tightened. He said nothing more, but the message lingered like smoke. When he left, the cold felt sharper. That night, Eliza packed quietly. Caleb watched, chest tightening, understanding before she spoke. "I won't be the reason they take from you," she said. "You've already given enough." He felt the truth of it cut deep, and deeper still the knowledge that letting her go would be another kind of loss he'd learned too well. For once, he stood. "Stay," he said, the word rough from disuse. "Not because they allow it, Because I choose it. She studied his face, searching for something he'd never been asked to offer before. When she nodded, it felt like the earth shifting underfoot. The town gathered again days later, drawn by rumor and the promise of spectacle. Snow fell harder, wind rising as if to test them. Eliza walked beside Caleb into the open, sack in her hands. She held it up once, letting the crowd remember what it meant. "I wore this so you wouldn't have to look at me," she said, voice carrying clear across the frozen ground. "But I've learned something. What I look like was never the problem." She let the sack drop. Scars caught the light, honest and undeniable. Murmurs rippled, but she did not falter. "I survived," she went on, "and I am done apologizing for it." Caleb stepped to her side, not shielding, not claiming, simply present. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy with recognition. No one spoke. No one laughed. When the crowd finally dispersed, it was without victory or defeat. Just people leaving behind a truth they could not unhear. They walked home together as the storm softened, shoulders brushing, steps aligned. In the quiet that followed, Caleb reached for her hand. She took it firmly, as if grounding them both. Spring would come eventually. It always did. But winter had given them something first, the courage to be seen. If you've ever felt small under other people's voices, remember this. Dignity grows slowly, but it grows best when shared. And if stories like this stay with you, walk a little farther with us. Subscribe to Wild West Tales, and let the quiet ones be heard.